This program deals with devil worship and satanic beliefs. It contains explicit scenes and descriptions of violent crimes and rituals.
Americans are asking, who attacked our country?
You have declared a subliminal jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives.
And night fell in a different world.
And Iblis is thinking, I should be getting this position, not Adam, and this guy is created from dirt.
And how does the army feel about you being head of the Temple of Set?
And the conspiracy theorists can say what they will, but
I want you to give me power over Adam, and I want you to give me soldiers and minions and all of these things.
The people had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in a position I'm in. We'll never let the true facts come above board to the world.
And I want you to be able to give me the ability to whisper into the hearts of mankind.
And who was the grotto leader? Don't remember his name. You don't remember the name of a person who involved you in murder?
Now these people are in very high positions, yeah? Yes.
Welcome back to Subliminal Jihad, episode 68. I am your co-host, Dimitri.
I'm Khalid.
And today, we have a very special guest on Subliminal Jihad. A real, in my book, a kind of titan of the podcasting parapolitical world. We have with us private investigator Ed Opperman. Ed, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm right here. How are you guys?
We're doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You sound like almost like a hypnotist. I feel like I'm going to quit smoking.
That's funny. Yeah, we just did an episode on that, actually.
I'm always hearing, it's true. I'm always hearing, about Dimitri's amazing radio voice. I really, when we first were thinking about this, I didn't even, consider, you have a great voice for radio. But apparently that's definitely true in terms of the feedback we've gotten, that his voice is just very mellifluous. In contrast to mine, that's something I've heard about the podcast. It's got one guy with an amazing voice and one guy with one that's not so much.
Well, as I was going to say, it's dialectical or something.
It's
right?
dialectical, yeah. It makes yours sound better. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was actually shocked going back listening to our Aquino episode, numbers 3 and 4, at how fast I did the intro back when we first started. And I think somebody probably mentioned there was I like the ASMR intro, and what can you do? You got to give the people what they want, right? So now it's slower, and I swear I'm not trying to hypnotize anybody. I know that's what all the CIA hypnotists say when they're trying to hypnonize you.
You're just trying to teach the audience what it's going to be, what it would be like if someone were trying to hypnotize them.
Yes.
All kidding aside, I have had a few guests on the show that right away I could tell that they were really hypnotists, and they were implanting messages.
Really?
Suggestions. Yeah. And I called him on. I says, you're involved in hypnosis, right? And another guy was a frequent guest, and he was openly, admitted he was a hypnotist too as well. But the last interview I ever did with him, he just went into this little rant that was so prepared. I says, "Whoa, this guy's never again."
Yeah, that it makes you wonder. It's we were just talking about Mr. Alan Watts the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and how when he was invited in to go to KPFA for the first time before he got his show, he was asked to say something, and he delivered this kind of perfect, transcendent monologue that ended exactly 15 minutes on the dot.
Yeah, extemporaneously. Yeah, I don't trust anybody who can produce a perfect extemporaneous monologue with no filler words or anything like that. It's people, I guess, like it, but it's sus. People use fillers.
It's but yeah, no neurolinguistic programming going on here. We might talk about it, but when we get into some of these topics. But yeah, I think we definitely. I just went on your show, Ed, and I've been a fan of it for several years. I've probably listened to hundreds of Opperman Report episodes, and I love the topics that you get into, and I don't know. I think they do overlap. I think they've both been a bit of an inspiration, and there's an overlap with the kind of stuff that we like to get into here. And yeah, I think we touched on a few interesting, things when we talked, like Ted Gunderson, Michael Aquino. By the way, I just to set the record straight, because I know you call him Michael Aquino.
Right.
And I was calling him Michael Aquino, and I think I might have even heard you on the broadcast bring that up. And I actually was going back and forth in my head because I remember researching this and trying to settle it when we did our first episode on Ipsissimus, himself. And so you're convinced that it's Aquino, right?
Everyone with that name Aquino. There's been several presidents of the Philippines with that name.
Yes.
They all pronounce it Aquino. But Aquino himself, wait, he pronounces it Aquino. Did you know that?
Well, that would make sense because Thomas Aquinas, that's how people usually say Thomas Aquinas. Yeah, I was thinking as we were just now that probably Aquinas or Aquino would probably be right. But I mean, my instinct has always been to say Aquino, but I picked up Aquino from Dimitri, so now I'm all over the
believe.
Place,
I think it's stuck in my head because maybe in some of the podcast interviews I listened to him in his last few years of life, he introduced himself as Aquino. And I think if I can dig, I think you're right about the Philippines thing because, you had like Corazon Aquino, who was the president. Right. But I think because it's rooted in Spanish that it is pronounced Aquino if you're talking about say anybody in the Philippines or in Spain or Latin America.
Well, in the Philippines, they call it Philippines.
Oh, interesting.
Philippines, they say.
Yeah. Well, I think because...
Well, I mean, I guess it's rooted in Latin, just like, Spanish is a Romance language, so... Yeah, probably.
It is, but I think Aquino's dad ostensibly was Sicilian, so he's Italian. So I think, I'm not sure how the Italians would natively do it. I think he does the Aquino to gesture maybe a little bit more towards the Thomas Aquinas thing. Like he's a great religious scholar, and but hey, we can call him whatever we want today, but we probably will talk about him. Really fascinating guy. Actually, Ed, maybe we'll start there. When did you first become aware of Michael Aquino? Like when did you first stumble across him?
Way back in the 80s on Usenet. No, it wasn't the 80s.
Oh, wow.
It was very early. Well, in the 80s, on with the McMartin preschool case, his name came up. And when I started, internet first came up. I was on Usenet all the time, and I guess I heard from him first from Alex Constantine. Was the first person I heard about him from.
Did you know Alex Constantine?
Wait. Do you guys know the whole story about Curio Jones?
Yes, that was the woman who. Basically was posting things about him, and then he managed to track her down to a university computer lab in San Diego. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was there for that whole thing live as it was going on. I used to read Curio Jones every day when she was normal. Okay, she wasn't crazy. Okay, and they tracked her down. They knew she was posting from a college library. They sent a biker in there. A guy from a biker gang with binoculars. And as soon as the post went up, there was a guy. Yeah, there was a guy at a window who gave a signal to the guy with the binoculars, and they saw who was posting. They followed her to a car. They got her plate number, and that was the first slap lawsuit. That was the first anonymous lawsuit. Yeah.
I did look that up, actually. Aquino kind of accidentally made case law in the 90s, I think related to this case, where he sued the ISP that was hosting whatever website or forum that Curio Jones was posting on, and it basically got knocked down by, the court threw it out, basically, and then that kind of established the precedent of you can, the ISP, the service provider is not liable for whatever. It's kind of like the Section 230 thing that, Facebook or Twitter is not liable for something somebody posts on their website. But Aquino tried to establish that he could get anybody taken off the internet that he wanted, who is saying that, talking about the Presidio case or that he was involved in any kind of thing. I forget. I know I read through her posts a little bit. Maybe a few times over the last 7 or 8 years. But what were kind of the exact? Was she just reiterating a lot of the Presidio stuff, or was she saying other things?
Well, it's pretty much all the standard stuff. A lot of that information came from, and once they got a hold of her, they drove her insane. if you read her writings now, it's just crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is she still around on the internet?
I think she has a website called Miss Curio or Miss Jones Curio, something like that.
Wow. That is. And do you know which biker gang was dispatched?
I don't remember. I probably
track her
did at the
down?
time. It was probably the Hells Angels, I think it was.
Okay, probably the Hells Angels.
Miss
They
Jones
seem to be
Curiosities, tasteful taxidermy and wearable oddities. Is that the one you're talking about?
That could be it.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So she does taxidermy now?
Tasteful taxidermy.
But if you read her content nowadays, it's just so out there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that she was arrested for stalking Steven Spielberg in 2001 and made death threats against Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she got rolled up into, I guess now she is kind of considered like a victim of the, quote, satanic panic. And that's something we've talked about. Wow, actually, Michael Aquino is mentioned in, she has a whole Wikipedia article. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. But when you click on Aquino, it just goes to the Temple of Set. Like we mentioned, he doesn't have his own Wikipedia page. But I guess, Ed, we talk about the satanic panic a lot on Subliminal Jihad. And kind of we look back a little critically on it. And I think a lot of the things you've done into it have helped shape my thinking on this. But what do you think about the whole phenomenon of the media phenomenon of the, quote, satanic panic, since you were there and you were watching this stuff happen live? Because nowadays people, a lot of mainstream people, take that as a shorthand of like something that was 100% not real. Nothing happened in the 80s. Like no kids were being abused. It was all manipulative social workers and preachers and things like that. So what do you think about that whole label and that phenomenon?
Well, I think, actually, this activity was going on, like you said, and then I think people like Geraldo and Oprah Winfrey, who are such suspect people on so many different levels, they did these sensational, hysterical reporting in order to discredit things, and Gunderson and Aquino and all that stuff, and the whole big stage, big show.
Yeah. I mean,
we brought up some idea. Yeah.
Yeah, the data point of you saying that Aquino and Ted Gunderson would talk on the phone every day during the McMartin case. Oh, boy.
Well, that was actually years after the McMartin case that they were on the phone every day. As a matter of fact, Maguli by that point, she had already hated Gunderson. She was no longer friendly with him.
Okay. Was she dating him?
I believe they were dating.
Yeah. Very odd. Kind of insertion into that. Yeah, I think
not as odd as you think. Not as odd as you think. Okay, because
in cases like when getting involved in kind of court cases like that,
a lot of PIs you get these calls all the time, and a female client will say, okay, I want to hire you. I had this other investigator. Then he would take me out on surveillance with him, and we'd sit in his surveillance van, and we wound up dating each other. And I'd say, my God, this is the most crazy, inappropriate thing I've ever heard in my life. He's taking you on another investigation,
Oh, wow.
Like,
Wow.
And you'd hear that stuff all the time. And with Ted, too, you'd hear the story, because there's a lot of lonely widows out there, and who want attention. And they'll send you money, all that kind of stuff. And he had a reputation for taking a lot of those cases.
Wow, that is interesting. And he also still had a little office at the LA FBI headquarters, I guess, as well that whole time, right? Yeah, one woman reported to me that she ran into him down at the LA FBI headquarters and that he was working there. Wow. And he was the special agent in charge there in the late 60s, right? Yeah. Or actually, I see. He was 1977, I guess. I'm seeing right here. But he had served in, Mobile, Knoxville, New York City, Albuquerque, New Haven, and Philadelphia, and Memphis during, we had brought that up before. We weren't sure if he was the head of the FBI office in Memphis when Martin Luther King was assassinated, but I guess he came after that in 1973. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole, a whole kind of thing. And actually, you had mentioned that he was the defense investigator for Jeffrey MacDonald in his murder case, right? And that was his first case as a private investigator. He left the FBI and he went to work straight for Jeff MacDonald. Wow. And could you tell us a little bit about what that case entailed?
Yeah, the story. Jeff MacDonald was a doctor at the ER, and one night he's home in bed with his wife, and according to him, a bunch of hippies came in with candles, chanting, all kinds of stuff like that, and stabbed up the whole family. Now, this was investigated, and he was exonerated by the military justice court, you know. But then they set up some kind of, somehow the civilian courts charged him. And there was a trial. He lost the trial. His friends hired Ted Gunderson to investigate the case. And Gunderson did find this group of witches and cults with, you know, and one of them confessed to him, and he had total control over. He took a videotape of her, a video deposition, but he had total control over this exonerating witness, who at the last minute recanted her story because she didn't want to get charged in the crime. Now, I've been in touch with, what's his name, MacDonald's current wife. He got married while in prison. I had her on the show a couple of times.
Wow.
And he wanted to talk to me, too, MacDonald. And I was trying to tell him, you know, do you know about Gunderson and his connection to Aquino and all this kind of stuff? And they just didn't want to hear it. They just were oblivious to this. And by the way, too, and Aquino was stationed there, by the way, too, you know, at the Fort Bragg.
Oh, yeah, that I did not know. I did not know that he was he at Fort Bragg when this happened?
If this was Fort Bragg where the murder took place, then he was stationed at this base where MacDonald was, okay, at the same time. And also, too, this is where the heroin was coming in from Vietnam and the body bags. This is where all that was going on.
The Golden Triangle.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, wow.
What a hotbed of activity, you know?
Oof. Yeah, and I also see here, he was a Green Beret, was he not?
Gunderson? I mean,
no, Jeffrey MacDonald.
Yeah, I believe he was, yeah.
Yeah, he was a Green Beret, and so this murder happened in 1970, and so I don't know if he had been in, do you know if he was in Vietnam before?
No, I don't. It's been so long since I talked to his wife. We had a little falling out after the show because she felt that I wasn't being an advocate for her on the air as much as she wanted me to be.
Oh, I see. Interesting. Yep, no, you're right. He was at Fort Bragg. He was assigned in September 1969 to 3rd Special Forces Group as a group surgeon, joined by his wife and children. He was in a section of the base reserved for married officers, which was, you know, secured by military police. Now, it's interesting because those were also the years that Aquino, he probably was going through Fort Bragg for Special Forces training because he was sent to Vietnam in 1969 and 1970. Now, of course, there's that second half of his tour in 1970. Interesting now that I think about it, where he says, I'm just not going to talk about that second half, because I think that might line up with the time frame of when the MacDonald murder happened, depending around that time. But either way, he would have been, and he also was trained as a Green Beret, Michael Aquino. Yeah, so they could have bumped into each other. And it also, that reminds me of, you know, we tend to bring up Dave McGowan. I know you've interviewed him before, the late, great Dave McGowan. And did you ever read his book, Program to Kill?
Oh, yeah. He sent me all those books.
Oh, yeah. Well, that one's, I know a lot of our listeners have really, that's a really important book for them. I know I read it a few years ago. It's a tough thing to get through. It's pretty dark, but
well, I think it's
he talks about... What's that?
I think it's impossible to get now.
Yeah, I think you can get, you know, digital copies of it. Maybe on I think I got some kind of bootleg copy on archive.org. Yeah, maybe it might be hard to get on Amazon. It's usually a good sign that a book is worth reading if the price gets jacked up and it's out of print and the CIA bought all the copies, all that stuff. But it is an interesting synchronicity because in that book, and then also, have you read Tom O'Neill's Chaos about Manson?
Yeah, I had Tom O'Neill on a show. I didn't read the book though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, he I think mentioned a couple of similar things. There was a case, I believe, in the 1950s. I'm forgetting the name. I think it was an airman in the Air Force serving, might have been in Kansas, but he kind of snapped completely out of nowhere and I think might have like sexually assaulted and murdered a child in like a totally brutal, savage way, and then had no recollection of it. And this is like in the early to mid 50s, a couple years into after MK Ultra started. And I know that Tom O'Neill was kind of bringing up this. He couldn't quite prove it, but was pointing at, because they were doing all kinds of experiments with psychedelics and hypnosis and stuff like that on military bases, to military personnel. And, maybe this guy had been hypnotized or hypnoprogrammed or something like that to have a murderous alternate personality or something, and he snapped and became like this child killer, but he has absolutely no recollection. It just makes you think of Sirhan and maybe some of the Manson family people, especially the like Squeaky Fromm, who went on to take a shot at Gerald Ford. So bizarre, right? And basically if there was like some kind of because that's what jumps out at me when I see that Ted Gunderson slides right in to investigate this, or he gets invited. I think he was still with the FBI, which is kind of interesting that was he hired as like a private investigator?
Yeah, he was definitely a private investigator. Yeah, what I was told by like I said again, by McDonald's wife, was that was his first case. He left the FBI, and that was his first case that he took after leaving the FBI.
Okay. Oh, actually, I see it right here. Yeah, in 1980, he became a defense investigator for Jeffrey MacDonald. I guess that must have been on appeal because he had already been convicted of it. He obtained affidavits from Helena Stockley confessing to her involvement in the murders, which she claimed in actuality had been perpetrated by a satanic cult of which she was a member. Yeah, then you have Aquino, and then you have maybe the kind of program to kill, and that's a special forces place. So, who knows what they were doing with, potential Green Berets, sending them off to go be in the Phoenix program and all that kind of stuff. Very
interesting,
very
too, because Manson was at the Boys Town. And then you got the camp. Who was also in the Phoenix program, too.
And, DeCamp mentioned in The Conspiracy of Silence that he also spent some time at Boys Town. You ever catch that?
Oh, really? I didn't catch that.
He said I think I read a little more in his book, Khalid. I don't know if you remember, or I can't remember if you read the DeCamp book along with me, but he mentioned a little bit about how he had like a rough time in his early teens, and he spent a little bit of time at Boys Town, but he wasn't an orphan. So that always jumped out at me as a little bit odd. I don't know if he just had oppositional, defiant kind of things going on, but he spent a little time there, which is what he said. He had such high respect for Boys Town because, he himself had spent some time there, which, adding that plus the Phoenix program thing is a little bit funny. Did you ever get to interview John DeCamp, Ed?
No, not DeCamp, but I did interview Tim Tate, Conspiracy of Silence. And
I heard that. That is a great interview.
Oh, yeah, he wasn't doing interviews at the time. I got really lucky with that. And DeCamp, I was contacted by a guy who was related to DeCamp, who told me, Ed, man, he's making that whole thing up. All that stuff, they're just running a con on everybody. None of that's true. None of his credentials are true. And also, too, another person I've come across has all of DeCamp's records and paperwork. From the Franklin cover-up case.
Really? So one of DeCamp's relatives called you up and told you that none of it was true?
Yeah, and it was an interesting guy, too, because he was involved. He wasn't military, but he was involved in some kind of military contractor or something, or a consultant or advisor or something. He had some connection with the military. And he was supposed to record with me. He never did. He chickened out the last minute.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but I listened to your interview with Tim Tate, and Tim Tate sounded pretty convinced, right? That this was, in fact, a real thing that was happening.
Oh, yeah, and I think now it's been confirmed just because of all that stuff with Henry Vincent. That guy went to prison twice over this thing,
Yeah, I got his book. I'm going to. We'd like to maybe try to have him on. He went on your show once, right?
Yeah, I think that's the only interview he's ever done. I don't think and I've talked to people who know him, who talk to him all the time, and he's not doing it anymore.
Ooh,
he's a very private guy to begin with, and very soft-spoken.
Yeah, I can understand. But he was basically, he was running the kind of the sort of the gay escort kind of side of things in Washington, D.C. with Craig Spence, right?
Right.
Yeah, and they were running all the credit card purchases through like a funeral home that he owned.
Yeah, cremation.
Is that right? Yeah, and wasn't it his receipts that got exposed either in the Washington Times in that famous homosexual prostitution ring ensnares Reagan Bush White House? And also, he one of our favorite targets on the podcast. One of his clients was William J. Casey, was it not?
I wasn't aware of that. No, I wasn't aware of that.
I feel like he said that Casey was one of the guys that would come in, and he was older at that point and had erectile dysfunction, but he liked to watch like young men do stuff, and that would be interesting. We did a whole episode kind of focusing on Bill Casey, really kind of an under-examined guy, at least in my book. I don't know, Khalid, would you agree about his escapade in the 80s?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I would. That was we read Victory, which was heavily focused on him, Peter Schweizer's Victory, it was quite a tale.
Yeah, he was flying around in a jet black secret plane throughout the entire 1980s, going to like the Vatican, going to Saudi Arabia, going to Pakistan. He was arming the Mujahideen and like that kind of future Al Qaeda type people.
He was China.
Well, his daughter was the lobbyist for Al Qaeda.
He had like his
Taliban.
He had like his own.
Really? His daughter
room.
was.
Okay, listen. This is a good one. I always get Colby and Casey confused, but I had Colby's son on the show. Okay,
really,
and I asked him about it. It wasn't Colby; it was Casey. Casey's daughter was the lobbyist for the Taliban under Ronald Reagan, and
I 100% believe that.
But you can't find it. I dare you to find it. You can't find it. I watched it on the news with my own eyes. Okay?
I just looked it up. Well, it's a little bit like rewriting history. I mean, if you look at the end of Rambo 3, for example, which totally lionizes the Taliban, it says, this film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters of Afghanistan. And then after 9/11, I think they changed it to, this is dedicated to the brave people of Afghanistan. It's like, ooh, they basically... just a little bit awkward. But Bill Casey was like absolutely central to Operation Cyclone, which was like a $5 billion plan to arm these guys. And when it started out, they were just trying to harass the Soviet forces. But then Bill Casey was such a true blue kind of anti-communist Cold Warrior that he wanted to actually give them Stinger missiles and help them actually win the damn thing. And it was a part of this whole strategy. I mean, this guy went back to, he was in the economic sabotage unit of the OSS in World War II against Germany. But then I think after the war, all that Nazi money that floated off to South America and into Swiss banks and stuff like that. Have you had Dave Emery on?
Yeah, I had Dave Emery on, yeah.
Yeah. He's somebody who's dug into all this stuff real deep and tracking people like Martin Bormann, who he believes never died. That was one of Hitler's main deputies, and he escaped to South America and also took a lot of the Nazi loot with him and laundered it into these different corporations and things like that. So there was this international shadow network that eventually would pop up. I found evidence of this myself in like Iran-Contra. They're straight up Nazi war criminals, involved in still around in the 1980s. And Bill Casey apparently, because he was a Wall Street lawyer, was one of the people tasked with kind of a trustee of some of these Nazi accounts. So he knew where kind of the money, like the Black Eagle Trust. I don't know if you're a big Yamashita's Gold head, speaking of the Philippines, but Khalid and I have really gone back and forth on kind of what kind of role that might have played at the end of World War II. All that Japanese gold that was stashed allegedly in the Philippines, and which Marcos, I think, availed himself of to some degree, which is why he was so wealthy. That runs through everything. You got John Singlaub, the Wackel and stuff. He was running around the 80s in the jungle there, looking for Yamashita's gold. And Bill Casey was also, I think I read something the other day that Bill Casey decided that Marcos wasn't being forthcoming enough with the gold supplies that he had, so he decided it was finally time for Aquino to overthrow him, and I guess that's what.
Yeah, we had read that about Reagan recently. Yeah, because we were talking about the significance of gold. I think, who was it who was going on about how pivotal gold is to the to all of this? Like, all goes back to gold.
It was actually it was Dave
one of those
Troy.
QAnon investigators. Yeah, right. Yeah, and so that led us back to the gold topic, and we were talking about how allegedly Reagan had wanted to switch to like rainbow dollars based on the gold standard, but they would have needed to borrow money from Aquino to finance it. Some of his
or from Marcos, I think.
From Marcos, from Marcos, and he wouldn't offer it, I guess. So it didn't
Actually,
come together.
this is a fun little tidbit. I just listened to the interview with that guy Dave Troy, who made that argument on the Farm podcast. You've had Recluse on, right, Ed?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Recluse is great. And he had Dave Troy on, and Dave Troy, actually, I mean, he's an interesting guy. I don't agree with all the conclusions and the directions he goes, but I think he has done a lot of good research. But he mentioned something weird at the end, which is that his dad's mentor was Donald Barr.
Right, I just saw that recently. I saw you wrote that.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, I'm not casting any aspersions towards him. Like, he said this himself, but he kind of said a little bit coyly like that. So some of this stuff, even, there's a personal angle to this for me because, I wonder like what was my dad aware of? Because of course Donald Barr, OSS, Wharton School, father of William Barr, who I'm convinced was involved in Iran-Contra and has like career CIA. Robert Johnson, right, was his code name.
As far as Barr goes, when he was first appointed, I talked to Chip Tatum about it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, man, he was up to his neck in Iran-Contra." And also, too, he worked for Kirkland and Ellis before and after the Epstein case. He worked for them before, and he worked for them after. Not during that period of time when Epstein was negotiating the trial down there in Palm Beach. But if everybody's going to make a beef about Acosta, because he was or there was someone else in Kirkland Ellis, they made a big beef about that. He had to resign. Barr was too.
Interesting. And yet he gets a little bit, like he doesn't really get thrown in with that, even though his dad is the one who, when he was running the Dalton School, hired Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah. We can just tell Barr's attitude, man. Look at, hey, I've killed people. I don't have to listen to you. It's just his whole attitude from beginning to end. How he got mixed up with Trump is just fascinating. I don't know, why would Trump bring a guy like that in? A real guy.
That that definitely touches on something I want to get into with you, Ed, because I mean a lot of these players, but I think we've been doing a Contra series. It's been a little while since our last thing. I think our last thing was Victory, which was about Bill Casey, or like 5th chapter of it. But I think the second one, which focused on Iran-Contra cocaine smuggling primarily through MENA. We covered, Terry Reid, right, the whistleblower.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the documentary, The MENA Connection. Yeah, he wrote the book Compromised. And have you ever talked to Terry Reid?
No, I haven't. I didn't even know he was still alive.
Yeah, I actually don't know if he's still alive either. I think he maybe receded into private life after all of his lawsuits and death threats and all of those things. But he was the one that described that he was at a meeting in Arkansas with, I believe, Bill Clinton was there. I think Barry Seal and Ollie North and CIA agent Robert Johnson, who later, and it's interesting, in like 1990. In the mid-'90s, he was saying, no, it's actually the former Attorney General, William Barr, was Robert Johnson, and how I'm blown away that, like, when he came back in the scene, especially with Trump, I found this again and again with Trump. It was kind of so frustrating that people would love to attack him, but they'd never attack him in ways that, would kind of open up the rabbit hole to connecting him to some real kind of deep organized crime, kind of deep state stuff. So nobody ever brought up, hey, this guy was like really involved in Iran-Contra and even the drug smuggling part of it. But I guess, the mainstream media can't admit the drug smuggling thing. It has to just be this thing everyone knows happened, but we can't acknowledge it. And it's just kind of out in the open. It's like, and he does kind of have this attitude of like he doesn't give a shit. This guy comes from the real high society, the 0.000 connected 1%, right?
Well, if you see, when I watched his confirmation hearing and he gave his little speech and he's introducing his daughter and his son and his nephew that he's planted in all these different departments in the government, Department of Justice over here, Department of Treasury over there. And then when he just starts to talk, I'm hearing a guy say, listen, I'm here to do the dirty work. I've done it before. I'm here now. And I could just see his whole the personality, the way he delivered things. I just said, this guy's walking in and do the dirty work, just like he did with Iran-Contra, all the parties.
Yeah, well, okay, and so I have a question about that, because these alliances start to get, I feel, like a little bit fuzzy when we start to get to Trump, because on the one hand, you have some of these kind of like Reagan-Bush era CIA, Iran-Contra enterprise type people floating around. I mean, then you had like Elliot Abrams come in later, real heavy hitters like that. But then there does seem to be like a real hatred with a lot of these neocons towards Trump, where they, people like Dick Cheney that like don't want to. Now maybe that's all an act or something. But do you know anything about that? Like, why was there a kind of a split in these factions at some point? Like who is Barr aligned with? I don't know.
Yes,
you think?
I think a lot of Trump's advice was coming from people like Bannon and Roger Stone. You know what I mean? And then you have his wacky son-in-law, mixed into the mix there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was like, well, Roger Stone had a guy that was loyal to him, and so bring him in there, and then, but there was really there was really no one loyal to Trump, because he donated money to both sides, to both sides of the capitalists anyway.
True.
Yeah. So he had no history with these people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess he
except for whatever was going on with blackmail and teenage girls at his hotels.
Well, yeah, the Epstein stuff, and just being a hotelier, that it definitely opens up. And then in the 80s, kind of probably offering great opportunities for money laundering through real estate and condos and such, right? Like, wasn't he? You were around in New York in the 80s. I mean, didn't Trump used to brag about his mafia connections?
Well, no, he had guys walking around with him that were organized crime. But what do you call it? Also, too, plus that whole thing with the whole John Tino story, which has been totally buried, about Trump hitting up this massage parlor in Times Square. It was an organized crime joint. And one day he asked for a teenage girl in there, and he had a threesome with a teenager.
Wow.
But also, too,
Studio 54.
Studio 54, he was a fixture over there with Roy Cohen, and also all the Process Church guys were in there, too, right? And Geraldo Rivera.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Geraldo Rivera was Studio 54. Michael Jackson was Studio 54. Oh, that whole crowd.
Wow. So what was Studio 54 really? Was it a kind of a honeypot joint? Did it have mafia connections? Who was the real movers and shakers behind it?
Well, back in the 80s, I had a nightclub in the 80s in Manhattan. So the mafia had their hand in every nightclub, no matter what. You had to get your laundry from them. You had to buy your liquor through them. Sanitation removal was through them. The doormen had to go through them and stuff. So they had a hand in every nightclub in Manhattan in those days. So Studio 54 was no different. There was a lot more open drug use and sales over there, and a lot more open sex and things were going on over there. It was run by Steve Rubell, who had more celebrity connections and organized crime connections, but everybody had organized crime connections.
Interesting. And okay, this is a question I think Khalid and I have discussed before, but I always noted it seems to me that something changed sometime around the 1980s and the 1990s, particularly with Italian organized crime, where it appears on the surface, like with the pizza connection case and all that stuff, that the FBI finally woke up one morning and realized that the mafia did exist, contra to what J. Edgar Hoover used to say, and they started actually going after them. And all these guys who would become pretty big public servant kind of figures kind of made their bones in the 80s. Like, I think of people like Giuliani, prosecuting the mob. So what was the deal with that? Because we also know that the U.S. government, and particularly like the national security state, the FBI, the CIA, they were all in bed going back to like World War II. with the mafia. So, like, what changed between them? Did it have something to do with Iran-Contra?
No, they were still in bed with the mafia because Iran-Contra, the Iran-Contra coke was sold through John Gotti, through a guy named Salvatore Reali. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It was a private investigator turned organized crime character that made a lot of scandal, a lot of problems for people. And, by the way, too, a lot of people don't realize, but do you know who Giuliani's top aide was, second in command was in the SDNY? Michael Chertoff. Michael Chertoff. When he had hair. He had a full head of hair and a mustache. Real quick, so we're going to be doing a show tomorrow with Casey Gay McGall. I'm taping with him. He's working on this whole thing about Al Sharpton working for the CIA. Okay, and it's the guy does great work. He really does. He doesn't not a great talker, but he's a great writer and researcher. So there's a lot of connections with that too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you think Al Sharpton? Do you know how far that goes back? I've heard he's an FBI informant, but what about the CIA?
He was definitely an FBI informant. There's no doubt about that. Me and Casey have been trying to work out these dates. He's going to quote me in the article. We're going to be talking about it tomorrow. We went over this. Because we're trying to figure out if he was an informant before '83, before the what do you call it, that coke deal with the DEA, or is he wearing the cowboy hat? He's trying to do a coke deal. And I'm convinced. I don't think Casey went through the smoking gun documents because clearly Al Sharpton was negotiating deals and making cases with the FBI or with all these organized crime guys and collecting money. Out there collecting money and stuff. All this crazy stuff he was doing. I don't know if you guys know the story about me and Al Sharpton with the part about where the guy who was installing my car phones when I had the beeper company. We were hanging out with his dad one day, and I said, Al Sharpton's a nice guy. He says, you would love Al Sharpton. He's a fun guy. He's very interesting, very personable, he's very polite, And he says, no, Ed, Al Sharpton's a terrible guy. And I said, well, why is that? The guy worked on the Michael Jackson tour that Al Sharpton promoted with Michael Francis. And according to this guy, in 1990, he told me this story, that Michael Jackson got caught with little boys, and Al Sharpton helped cover it up. And this is 3 years before Jordy Chandler allegations came out about Michael Jackson. Nobody was talking about Michael Jackson and little boys at that time.
Wow. So, yikes. That's not so good.
That's crazy.
That's not so good. Well,
I saw.
Yeah.
I've always been convinced about Michael Jackson because of that, because it was 3 years before anybody was talking about him.
Yeah. You gotta.
And then plus since then, I've had Paul Baresi on the show, who was Michael Jackson's investigator, who did all those payoffs and stuff like that, and he said he's guilty.
Wow. I mean, I think it's hard to imagine that he's not. Basically. Yeah. And but then going back to the mafia for a second, like, did something change in, say, like the 90s? Because Gotti eventually went to jail. So did his luck run out? Did he get on the wrong side of somebody in power?
When Giuliani came into office, they passed a lot of stuff when he became mayor, and where you weren't allowed to have a strip club anymore. They were shutting down strip clubs, but not all the strip clubs. Only there were certain families that were allowed to continue, and there were certain families that were targeted. So there were some families that went totally unfazed whatsoever, and wild men like Gotti and those bunch, were rounded up, and all went to prison.
Which families remained untouched?
I'd rather not say.
Okay, fair enough. We have Google. We could look it up. Well, that's interesting. Another person that I was actually just reading about yesterday, who I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was a pretty big player in taking down some of those mafia people and establish his credentials, was the Trump slayer himself, Robert Mueller. Robert Swan Mueller III, right? Yeah, and like was he involved in the Pizza Connection case? He was involved in BCCI, right?
I do not recall if he was involved. I don't recognize that name until recently, and I still get his name confused with Comey, so.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, you're right. Yeah. Comey, I believe, was involved in the Pizza Connection case. But one thing that was interesting about Robert Mueller is I didn't quite realize like how blue blood of a background he had and some of his family connections. Yeah, he did oversee the prosecutions of Manuel Noriega, Pan Am Flight 103, the Lockerbie bombing, and John Gotti and BCCI. Really specialized in white collar stuff. But I didn't realize that he's actually, well, first of all, I think he's the grand nephew of, God, I'm trying to look it up right now, of like a railroad executive. And was also connected with a lot of other powerful families, and actually is the first cousin, once removed, of Richard Bissell Jr., the CIA, like, Bay of Pigs guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Let me see if I can bring it up right here. Robert Swan Mueller III and Richard Bissell Jr. are first cousins. Because Richard Bissell's mother's maiden name was Truesdale, and I believe she is the daughter of William Truesdale, who was, an American railroad executive of the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad at the turn of the century. And I guess, his daughter married. I'm just starting to realize, like, all these people are much more kind of connected. Richard Bissell was born in Mark Twain's mansion in Hartford, Connecticut. Bissell, I believe, was Skull and Bones at Yale, and then, developed the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird, and was the architect, of the Bay of Pigs. So, I mean, that's a good, interesting family connections then for Mueller to be taking down the mafia and being this guy who, I don't know, what did you make of Mueller's whole investigation into Trump?
That's a good question. I think there's a lot of stuff that they didn't look into. A lot of stuff about Epstein they didn't look into. Connections to Trump and Epstein, Trump and little kids. A lot of stuff they didn't look into. That's what I think.
Oh, you know what I wanted to ask you? I think you're probably aware of this, but what is the deal with Donald Trump and Resorts International?
That's a fascinating story. The whole, because I'm just finding out now. I'm hearing about how the Rothschilds bailed him out of that deal. Really? It was a funny. You don't know that. It's a fascinating story. Someone really has to I put together the stuff that I knew because there was a couple of private investigators working who switched sides in mid litigation and stuff. And Merv Griffin, the thing that always struck me is Trump says, I got the best of Merv Griffin, I got the best in that deal. And Merv Griffin would just smile and say, I got everything I wanted. Wow. And what's even funnier than that is at the time, remember Disco Fever, the dance show on TV? You probably don't remember Denny Terrio.
I'm probably too young. I was too young for it probably, but Disco Fever.
There was this character named Denny Terrio who taught John Travolta how to dance for Saturday Night Fever. And they gave him his own TV show called Disco Fever. I think, I'm pretty sure Merv Griffin Productions is the one who produced it for him. So it turned out Denny Terrio was a roommate of my girlfriend's brother. And he used to come home and say, Merv Griffin's chasing me around the office. He wants me to have sex with him. He's demanding
And I've heard that too. I think I read that he had some kind of Me Too-ish kind of allegations against him in later years, and people would say he would chase them around the office.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's very weird. Yeah, because then I think he eventually spun that company off to Saul Kerzner, who was a real estate magnate like a resort magnate in South Africa, who's been rumored, who is pretty much a supporter of the apartheid government and had a lot of international organized crime connections. I think once Merv Griffin and Trump kind of had they settled their battle over that company, it was Merv Griffin that got Paradise Island, which was kind of the original core of Resorts International. And then eventually, I think Saul Kerzner, he has the Atlantis Resort on it today. But I dug into it a few years ago. Did you know that the island that Resorts International was on, we discovered a few really crazy things about it. But one that I think around World War II and right after, that island was owned by a Swedish industrialist named Axel Wenner-Gren, who was basically a Nazi. He was friends with Hermann Goering and also the former King of England, who was like the Governor General of the Bahamas during the war, and was suspected of the FBI of being a Nazi spy during the war. And he owned Paradise Island that Resorts International would later be built on. But you know what that guy did? He went on to build the Disneyland monorail and was friends with Walt Disney. So you got a Nazi billionaire there. Then on top of that, are you familiar with the story of Candy Jones, Ed?
Yeah, I think I did it. I interviewed the guy that did the book about her. She's the one that was passed around all the millionaires, right?
Well, yeah, she was the model, the World War II pinup girl who believes that she was hypno-programmed by the CIA to be like a hypnotized spy, basically. And yeah, there was some stuff like that where she was taken to CIA headquarters and kind of forced to do various compromising things. She had Long John Nebel.
Right. Okay, I know this story. I know this story. Yeah. Long John Nebel was fascinated with her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah, they were married.
Right. Okay.
And I think so our latest episode was all about that book by Donald Bain, but there was something that jumped out at the end because I don't know if you remember that she had an episode where she felt like she was being set up to go down to the Bahamas and commit suicide around the time that Long John Nebel was kind of trying to get her out of this whole CIA thing. And wouldn't you know it, where her trip was being planned by, probably the CIA to go jump off a cliff, it was Paradise Island, Resorts International.
I tell you,
in the early 70s.
I'm hearing something new here because I thought that the Merv Griffin Paradise Resorts International problem was Atlantic City. No, it's an island.
It was both. It was both. They had both. Yeah. So the island is really important. That's where it started in the Bahamas. But then it eventually moved up when they legalized gambling in Atlantic City. I believe they moved up to Atlantic City and were basically, I think, among the first. Yeah, they opened the Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City in 1978, and then in '86, after James Crosby, the chairman, died, then Donald Trump took it over, and then they got in these fights. And I think Donald Trump ended up with a couple Atlantic City casinos as part of the settlement with Merv Griffin. So basically, I think the way it split was Merv Griffin got to keep the island and the resort casino there, and Donald Trump got the Resorts Casino, which I think he renamed in Atlantic City. But I think it was actually the Taj Mahal project. They started building the Taj Mahal Casino in 1983. And then I believe Trump got to inherit it after as a part of his settlement. So, yeah, just,
So Trump ended up with a casino in Atlantic City where everybody was 90 years old.
Yeah.
That place was such a disaster, right?
Oh, yeah, I've only been there once, but, yeah, very, rough and tumble town, And I actually noticed here that Merv Griffin's purchase when he started this whole takeover was financed by Michael Milken and his high-interest junk bonds. Yeah. And that guy's a whole, he's doing all this Clinton Foundation stuff. He's got, the Milken Institute in Los Angeles, all these big people. I think I found years ago that Brock Pierce was going to Milken Institute gatherings, hobnobbing with everybody. He was involved in the Clinton Foundation, too, way back, 2008. But I digress. But the Trump thing is weird because it seems so mafia connected. It's rumored to have been started by kind of a joint venture by Alan Dulles and Meyer Lansky, I think in the early 60s. In the early to mid 60s, through a company called the Mary Carter Paint Company, which is a New Jersey paint manufacturer, and then. Yeah, so this paint company goes and buys a casino island, an island in the Bahamas, and decides to build a casino. Totally normal, sounds like so far. And when the main guy dies in the 80s, Trump swoops in. Now, why do you think Trump swooped in to buy the Bahamian part? I guess maybe. When did he officially kind of get involved in Atlantic City? Was it in the early or the late 80s?
Okay, the first one had to be early 80s because my sister got married in around 1980, and I know they had gone down to Ivana's restaurant at the Trump.
Mm-hmm.
casino down there, which was nice in the beginning. It was a beautiful. Ivana's was at the time was the nicest restaurant I'd ever been to.
Wow.
The fanciest.
Well, didn't she had a heavy hand in like the decoration and the design of the whole place, right?
It was a beautiful place.
Yeah. Well, so I guess maybe he, I mean, I feel like there has to be something going on there with him getting directly into the casino business, especially when you think about like Howard Hughes and the history of places like Las Vegas. There's such extensive mafia ties going on there. And then he lost money on all that casino stuff, right?
Which is pretty hard to do.
Yeah. Unless it's getting taken out the back door, right?
Yeah.
We're back now. Ed, do you want to tell us a story about Giuliani and Nicky Barnes?
Yeah, because you were saying before about the relationship with the SDNY prosecutor's office and organized crime, right? Mm-hmm. And right around that same time, in the 70s, when Nicky Barnes got arrested and he was doing time. By the way, too, my ex-partner's father is the guy who arrested Nicky Barnes for bribery.
Wow.
Okay? Or he tells that story, it's hysterical. Okay. He passed away now. When he told that story, it was hysterical. So what happened was Nicky Barnes is in prison, and the guy who in command running his heroin operation started dating his wife in public. So Barnes was upset about this. He tried to get him to stop and just do it in private. He says, "I understand, okay, I'm away, but don't do you're making a fool out of me." Mm-hmm. They won't listen to him. Nicky Barnes sends 2 guys over there to kill him, right? But instead of going there to kill him, they sit down at the table and they eat with him and they party with him all night long, right? So Barnes has nowhere to turn. So he turns to Rudy Giuliani, the prosecutor's office, and he says, "Listen, my motivation for doing this, for coming to you, is because I got guys out there supposed to be doing things for me, but they're doing things against me." Now, this is all on tape. You can listen to it. It's on YouTube, okay?
Wow.
All right? So the next night, 2 white guys go into that same club and shoot up the ex-partner and the other guys, the hitman, right? And then... the next day, Rudy Giuliani in the documentary is in front of that nightclub doing the press conference. He's the one investigating the murders.
Oh my God!
Wow. That was New York City in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s. That's what it was like.
Oof.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. We both lived in New York for a while, but much later after the storm, so to speak, and it's hard to wrap my head around some of the stories that. The stuff like that, like the stuff that you tell from the 70s and the 80s, even going into the 90s, it was a real wild place. But Khalid, did you have a question you wanted to ask Ed?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering, Ed, what you attribute your longevity to in this field. You've been doing this for a really long time. It's something that can actually be, somewhat dangerous, involves certain risks. You've been in a lot of different fields, and you've worked in a lot of different domains. So I was just wondering what, above all, would you say is the reason for how long you've been able to persist in this area?
What is that, a threat?
No. Well, I am wondering, kind of, why are you still alive?
We're asking for advice. Yeah.
Right.
You're right. You're right. I've had, I don't know, man. I've just always, I remember I said once I could be in a bus crash where everybody on the bus dies and I'll walk right out of it, I've just been, I guess, a lot of luck, a lot of good faith, clean living, and also too, I think everybody I deal with knows I'm a straight shooter. I'm not messing with people. I'm not, lying to people or ripping people off. People know they can trust me. If they keep, or if I have to keep a secret, I'm not going to burn people that are good to me and I'm good to them. So that's, I think you get far away with that. Like no one has a beef with me, that they've done something, So there's that. My faith in God. I address a lot of my life, the miracles in my life, to my faith in God. For sure. But even with that, I'm sure there's been some other hands too, moving things in my favor. Again, older people in my life that have known me, that maybe had some kind of connections that kind of kept an eye out for me. Because again, I was a good kid.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I will say, Ed, that's something that I appreciate about your show that we delve into sometimes is you're one of the very few people I feel like in this sphere that is two things that don't usually go together is that you're a guy who calls himself a socialist, but you're also religious. Right?
Yeah, and I can't
which
understand.
We're very friendly to on this podcast. Because,
which just sounds like the natural course of things. I guess maybe people who are like right wing Christians, who don't believe in food stamps for hungry children, or never really understood the story of the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? Is that guy climbing over the wall looking for help? Is that your neighbor, brother?
Right.
And I guess a lot of people just don't get that. But it's in the teaching too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I would agree. I was raised Catholic, and that always jumped out at me is the idea. Jesus doesn't seem like a capitalist,
Yeah.
No.
I was raised Catholic too, by the way.
Definitely not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in the Bronx.
That's right.
That same school that Sotomayor went to, Blessed Sacrament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, but we like to talk about that a lot because I think there's a lot there's a lot of anti-socialism, anti-communism stuff on particularly in like American Christianity, really Western Christianity in general, and then there's also a lot of hostility towards religion among people who consider themselves socialists or Marxists or communists or things like that, and that's always been. It's been one of my bugaboos that's developed of, I think socialists should really not be so hostile to, or I don't think atheism has to go along with fairly redistributing everybody's, the resources of, society in an equitable way. You know what I mean? And sometimes you need a deeper moral kind of, it can be helpful, I think, to have the, a lot of the good things that have happened, I think, in the United States often were, like the civil rights struggles and things like that were by people who were religious and had that kind of conviction for it. So I think at least in an American context, it's it's a potent combination if anybody's, willing to actually combine them.
Yeah, and it goes too. You'll have these right wingers say they believe in liberty. We believe in liberty, but then they're supporting police shooting down people in the street. We support the blue. At the same time. So yeah, there's just so much. And 90% of the people that don't even understand what the word socialism means. They think it has something to do with freedom. They just don't get it. But it's not their fault.
No, it was pounded into people's heads.
Yeah.
For these words, they represent their liberty doesn't mean liberty in any abstract way. It just means the dominance of their views. That's why if there's any threat to the cultural dominance of their opinions, that's an attack on liberty. But if liberty is actual liberty in the technical sense is being threatened, it doesn't actually matter, and it doesn't have anything to do with liberty as they define it, and it's not a problem.
We were just talking about that, and I think we just dug up. We were discussing an episode recorded the other day, Ed. We're looking through. I guess in the history of WBAI, they tried to have a thing maybe in the 60s where they'd have left-wing people on and then right-wing people on to sort of satisfy the fairness doctrine. But a lot of right-wing people wouldn't go on, and one of them had a pretty hilarious quote of I respect the constitutional right to free speech too much to pretend that to like sit there and let some communists make a mockery of it. So basically they said, we're not going on unless you ban all communists from your radio station, because we believe in free speech so much that, that we're not going to pretend that a communist like is, not using it as a weapon to like destroy liberty. So it's basically like whatever, reifies what the system we already have that we want to maintain is liberty, and anybody talking, so there's really, yeah. That's a strong dynamic.
Yeah, I definitely think that faith in God is very indispensable in this area, and is an aspect and a dimension of this that people often underappreciate, because they don't really see the value that it can have, or the benefit that it can have materially. They don't understand how that can work. But it really, if you take a step towards God, he'll take 10 steps towards you, So I think, it's something that has a real value and does pay serious dividends. So that is, I think, definitely an important lesson to take.
Yeah, and it's especially also, I mean, with all this QAnon stuff going around, first of all, I feel like that, even them talking about satanic cults kind of shitcoats the whole thing for any, like, real discussion of it. But at the same time, like, how do you explain all these, like, QAnon generals that are all Christian American patriots that are, like, hanging out with Aquino, the biggest Satanist ever, like somebody like Paul Vallely, it's kind of mind-blowing how people could compartmentalize that into, I would imagine that, like, George Patton III, who Aquino worked for, was a pretty rock-ribbed Christian. I'm sure it's what he considered himself. But, it's like, if that's how far you're willing to compromise in order to beat the godless commies, you're willing to team up with this, a pudgy Dracula Satanist wizard who wants to do mind war on the entire world.
Even putting him aside, Flynn's association with George Nader, there's no way George Nader came into his office all those times and then they didn't. You don't get into the White House. You don't get into meetings with these people without them. You give me your date of birth, and I'm going to run your criminal record. That's going to happen. So there's no way they didn't know about what this guy was up to. And he's bringing a phone with child porn down to Mar-a-Lago with him. What if you lost the phone?
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
And Nader was a consultant to Eric Prince. I mean, I remember that story that kind of got buried, where
he was
like
also
right before
involved
the election
with Khomeini negotiating the hostage releases in Iran. That guy was all over the place, man.
That was in our first Contra episode where we talked about the October surprise. Yeah, I didn't realize Nader was involved in that. Yikes.
Oh yeah, and Armenian hostage negotiations. Yeah, and then you got Bannon, up to his neck in this kind of stuff, and Trump's association with Epstein, and even Bannon said that about Bannon was very close friends with Epstein too, as well was that guy Wolf, who wrote the book Fire and Fury, who's been on Epstein's plane many times.
Really?
And
oh God!
Oh, you didn't know that, man?
I didn't know that.
Okay, you know how the story is about why did Trump and Epstein have a falling out? Okay. We got some cockamamie story. It came from Roger Stone. Trump thought Epstein was such a nice guy for letting the kids use his pool. Okay, that crazy story, right? But the other story you got comes from Epstein. Okay, who used to do this thing with these comedians. You can look this up online. In fact, I posted the article someplace.
Oh yeah.
And Epstein told the comedians, well, the reason is because of Trump doing this thing of hitting on people's wives and sleeping with the wives of his friends. And he would do this stunt where he would put them on a speakerphone and the wives would hear the husbands cheating. Wolf tells the exact same story that Epstein told to those comedians, okay? And Wolf knew Epstein.
Wow.
And then you got Bannon saying about when that whole thing was coming up about that guy Roy Moore down there, whatever that was in Georgia, whatever, the guy with the little girls.
In Alabama,
Right, and Bannon said, well, what about you? It was because Ivanka was complaining, and Bannon says in the press, well, what about your father and that 13-year-old? Okay, he knows both of them. He believes the story. So where's that coming from?
Wow.
And Flynn was with this guy Nader, Manafort. the whole scandal with him and his other men sleeping with his wife and all this stuff like that. Same thing. Roger Stone does the exact same stuff.
Oh, and yeah. No, Roger Stone is kind of a cuckold. Yeah, he's really into that, right?
Manafort, too, exactly. The same exact thing.
Really?
Yeah, oh, yeah. They hacked into Manafort's emails, and they got all that stuff. And they have his daughter saying, has mom been tested for STDs?
Oh, I think I remember that. Yeah, has mom been tested for STDs? Yeah, and so Paul Manafort, the other thing that always drove me crazy about the whole Mueller investigation is I feel like when I looked at the bio, the resume of Paul Manafort, it just screamed CIA to me because he was representing like Jonas Savimbi in the Angolan Civil War and a bunch of other people that were basically CIA proxies or CIA assets. And even in Ukraine, I think a lot of people, I don't know, the whole kind of politics about, Ukraine and Russia and stuff like that, it seems almost more likely to me that he and Roger Stone were doing something on behalf of U.S. interests in Ukraine, and they were not Russian agents. Now, were they involved maybe with like criminal elements? Because, of course, the Russian organized crime is like so vast and probably had its tentacles all up in Ukraine, sure, yeah, but I feel like there's like a CIA connection to these guys running around the world being, the torture lobbyists, basically, but like basically for CIA assets mostly. And the fact that, I forget, there was a lot of inside baseball with the kind of natural gas deals that the EU and Russia were both kind of competing for to offer to Ukraine.
Rosneft. Google the shows they did on Rosneft, man. They were all hooked up with it. They're on both sides of the aisle, which is why nobody talks about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that has to probably interlock with Hunter Biden and Burisma and all that stuff. That also seems like CIA kind of machinations going on, and that's probably why Hunter Biden's not going to get. I would think the biggest reason why maybe they aren't gonna slap him with anything or dig into it any further. Of course, it would be embarrassing to like Joe Biden, but I think a lot of it is like he might have been doing this as like in an unofficial capacity for the U.S. government and trying to like exert influence basically in Ukraine, and that's why they're probably not going to prosecute him, as scandalous as it may look. He was working for the company.
Before I forget, because you were talking about the torturers' lobbyist company, they've been Manafort and Stone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another guy who got involved in that company used to be the sergeant at arms of the Senate, and his name was Liebergood.
That's right.
Right.
Oh,
and he became a lobbyist, and his company became so big, he merged with Manafort and Stone. And his son just committed suicide on January 7th because he was the sergeant. He was a hill cop down there. The hill cop that killed himself.
Yep. That is pretty wild.
Yep.
Yeah. And now we found out that both of those Capitol Hill police officers were not killed, but one committed suicide and one coincidentally maybe dropped dead from a stroke.
Yeah. I don't believe that at all. I think they were both killed. I think they were part of the insurrection, and they were both gotten rid of by other people as part of the plan. Because, Manafort's company did the event planning that day.
Really?
Manafort's event planning company did the event planning that day.
Oh, interesting.
There's a lot of connections in that. I did a whole show on it. There's a bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I feel like, and then of course we brought up when I went on yours, Charles Flynn, who was like in the room, kind of on the phone with everybody, planning the National Guard response to January 6th, which has been barely talked about, but he's the Deputy Chief of Staff G357 since June 2019, so he's pretty high up. I mean, 3-star general. It's only one star higher you can go after that. And that's almost been not talked about at all. I mean, you'd think that Michael Flynn gets bagged on a lot by kind of the liberal side of the mainstream media, but yet there's been very little discussion about how, like Charles Flynn is still at the highest levels and seems to be, nobody seems to mind.
Man, Flynn wanted to kidnap that Turkish guy. Like he never mentioned it to his
Gulen,
brother.
right?
Yeah, come on, But you guys know,
they're all wrapped up in the Turkish lobby.
Oh, no, they're all in the lobby all over the place. But you guys know the story about Hunter Biden's laptop and Giuliani and Bo Dietl and Birkenfeld and all that?
I've followed it somewhat, a lot from the interviews you've done. What have you been able to suss out about the laptop, like, at this point?
Well, the whole story is a long, long story, and my connection to Dr. Keith Abloh and stuff like that. But we'll just hit the end part of it and shorten it a bit. Hunter Biden went to live with Dr. Keith Abloh for 3 months. And when he left, Keith Abloh retained his laptop and some notebooks and diaries and all kinds of stuff. Okay? And Bradley Birkenfeld was a Swiss banker whistleblower who wrote a book called Lucifer's Banker. He did some time, but he got $125 million whistleblower compensation for the information he turned over. So he wrote a book, Lucifer's Banker. They have a book launching party. Who's at the party? Rudy Giuliani, Bo Dietl, Bernie Kerik, John Kirikawa, the CIA whistleblower. And I think Abloh's brother was there is what happened. But anyway, so this crew gets word that Keith Abloh has Hunter Biden's laptop and he wants $2 million for it. The only place you're going to hear that reported is on my show on my Patreon, where Birkenfeld tells me directly. Okay? And story is, I know. The story is Birkenfeld and Bo Dietl go down to negotiate with Dr. Keith Abloh in Massachusetts. And that evening, negotiations break down. And the next day, the DEA shows up with a search warrant for Dr. Keith Abloh and take the laptop.
Wow. And that's the last we've heard of it.
No, according to Birkenfeld, he believes that the material from that laptop was placed on the other laptop that went to the Mac repair place in Delaware. And I says, well, then
interesting. So this would be the actual chain of custody for the one laptop. This is the one that was actually reported on and found at that weird Mac store is a clone of the real one.
Right, because I even have on my website, on my Patreon, a incredible press conference where 4 reporters are in that Mac store. He let 4 guys in and they grilled him.
Yes.
And anytime we got down to the chain of custody, he broke down and he said, no comment, okay? And I have that for free. The whole thing was sent to me. Yeah.
I listened to that. I listened to that when you uploaded it. It is bizarre.
Yeah, the guy says to me, Ed, this is so important, man, but I can't betray and say, say that I was recording everybody at the thing, but here you go. So he gave it to me. They gave it to me, I'll say it. It's a matter of it. But anyways, so that's and then once I said to Birkenfeld, so Birkenfeld tries to say to me, so I guess the DEA was involved, or they got it somehow over there. They must have my phone tapped, he says. And I says, well, Bradley, doesn't it seem more likely that someone like Giuliani could have called a judge and had that pulled off?
Yeah. Well, what do you make of Giuliani kind of making apparently such a fool out of himself with both, I feel like, the laptop thing and with the challenging the election, everything leading up to January 6th? Because it seems like he's up to something, but he was almost acting, and maybe he's just losing it or whatever, or he doesn't care anymore, but it seemed like almost he was being too incompetent, like it was conspicuous how incompetent he was being. What do you think about that?
That's interesting. And the whole Lynn Wood thing, too, man, who just totally disintegrated right before our eyes. I couldn't take my eyes off it. And then he starts quoting. He starts quoting this guy, Timothy Homseth, who's a guy I found.
Really?
Oh, my God. I wanted to do a show about Casey Anthony. So I found Timothy Homseth wrote a book about Casey Anthony, self-published it. I brought him on my show, and he's all over the place. But I thought it was my fault that he wasn't making sense because I had just been through a custody evaluation with a therapist that day right before I ran home and did the interview. So I was going through all my custody stuff. So that was his first interview he ever did anywhere with anybody. And he starts sending me press releases every couple of days after that, right? So I have him back, right? Because I thought he was out there, on the right side doing legit stuff. I have him back, and he's even worse than the first time. He's making no sense. He's on meth or something, So the guy winds up, he's trying to get me to commit some crime for him, like he had a restraining order. He had a restraining order. He's trying to get me to work around it, And I said, man, dude, this is crazy. And so he winds up violating that restraining order and going on the run. He was a fugitive for a period of time. Finally, he gets arrested. Wow. This is Lynn Wood's source that Mike Pence is a pedophile.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Mike Pence is a little weird. He is in that group, The Family, which is like a very creepy, kind of religious, para-religious kind of group that teaches that, I don't know, it like teaches you to praise like Jesus, Pol Pot, and Hitler simultaneously. Really? Because, yeah, it's like the guy Doug Coe, C-O-E, who is really big with George Bush, really close with George Bush, and that kind of a Republican milieu. And yeah, I think Jeff Charlotte, the journalist, wrote a book. He kind of infiltrated them for a year called The Family. And Mike Flynn was in it. Hillary Clinton was in it for a while. Really? A number of Republicans that got caught up in like sex scandals and stuff like that were also involved. I want to say maybe Mark Foley was involved in it for a little while. And yeah, it's like very, on the out, they run the National Prayer Breakfast every year, very kind of innocent, normal.
Okay, I've heard that story. I know that story. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I think they were mixed up with the Finders too. There's a little overlap with the Finders.
There may have been. That wouldn't surprise me at all, because Doug Coe, super creepy guy. Yeah, he would give these very weird kind of speeches, like recasting Jesus as a kind of manifest destiny, like will to power. Honestly, it sounds like Aleister Crowley. Like it sounds like a psychotic, like will to power kind of thing.
Who wrote the book? I'll try and get him on the show.
Jeff Charlotte, I think Sharlet. He's on Twitter. You could find him there. And yeah, he definitely reported that Mike Pence was a part of it. And yeah, it's they live in dormitories in Washington. A lot of congressmen like live at the dormitories of The Family, but they've also specialized in recruiting like African leaders into this family and convincing them, usually kind of like right-wing U.S.-backed African leaders, the kind that would be, CIA assets, and that really kicked up around like the 90s when they started really going after Africa, and that's really a whole thing. I don't know if Al Sharpton ever went over there, but Jesse Jackson.
Al Sharpton was in Rwanda when that stuff was going on.
Really?
Casey Gaines going to blow up the internet tomorrow when it comes on the show. And he was down in the Caribbean down there with I forget whose wife, one of these the president's wife down there in the Caribbean. He's got good stuff, man, and it does appear that Sharpton's up to his neck in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know his friend Jesse Jackson, and some of my own research years ago about what was going on in West Africa in the 90s. He was picked by the Clintons to go over and negotiate a peace deal in Sierra Leone during that country's civil war, and that's where all the blood diamonds were coming from. We'll do a whole episode on it one day, because there's some really crazy stuff, even connecting to like 9/11 going on in Liberia and Sierra Leone in the late 90s. But Jesse Jackson went over there to negotiate this peace deal. There's a funny story I think you can still find on BBC where he kind of insulted the people. I want to say maybe it was in Togo where they had this peace summit, and he refused to get out of the helicopter that brought him there until the CNN cameras arrived, and he like held up the whole peace talk because there weren't cameras to catch him like exiting the helicopter and looking cool. And he ended up dealing with Charles Taylor, who was a CIA asset going back to the 80s. The CIA broke him out of prison in Massachusetts and shipped him off to go to Libya to train under Muammar Gaddafi, but he was probably spying on him. Anyways, he ended up president in the 90s, and he was basically sponsoring these rebels in Sierra Leone that were like cutting people's hands off and raping people, using child soldiers, all to control these diamond fields. And Jesse Jackson like negotiated this he played tennis with Charles Taylor. They became best buddies. Wow. And then he negotiated this like sweetheart deal that basically ceded the control of all of the most profitable diamond regions to this rebel army that also might have been like CIA or British backed, and basically gave like kind of Charles Taylor like free reign to keep extracting blood diamonds out of there. And he was wrapped up with like the Saudis and bin Mahfouz, and Al Qaeda was there laundering money in 99 and 2000, laundering tens of millions of dollars into diamonds right before 9/11. Anyways, that's a whole thing. But Jesse Jackson, all up in the middle of it. Also, Susan Rice, who's very close with Biden. She went over there for similar kind of peace talks to mediate things in the late 90s. She went to meet with the kind of left-leaning president of Nigeria. And when they went to meet with him, they go down, her and I'm forgetting who the other diplomat was, another very blue blood kind of guy. They go down and they have tea and they start talking with him. The guy clutches his chest and he dies. She's Stanford. I mean, she's like super plugged in. I thought it was weird she didn't get a cabinet position, or I almost thought she was going to be VP for a while. But
my daughter actually met her. My daughter met her at college when she came to speak at the college. Yeah, but Casey Gaines, we just did a whole show about this, about Susan Rice and all these stories. You should have him on the show. You guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. Khalid, you wanted to ask a Vegas question, right?
Yeah, well, I was just wondering if you had any updates on your investigation of Stephen Paddock and what your thoughts were on that at this point.
Well, boy. I think Paddock, what happened with Paddock is he went crazy from playing at Joker Poker 19 hours a day. And
I've always thought that too. Like, people have been like, it doesn't make any sense. How did this guy, I'm like, if you do that, like, you will lose your mind. Like that, it's not really
so
like,
true.
but
Even if you play for an hour, you get hypnotized and you're hitting those buttons, you don't realize what you're hitting anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And he was doing this for years and years and years. Someone just showed me something recently. Maybe you guys heard about this or whatever, but that someone connected to him was arrested at a bus stop out in front of Best Friends for Animals in Utah.
Oh,
that's interesting. We've been following like some of the Best Friends for Animals stuff, like recently. I mean, that's like a big process thing, I guess.
But if you look over there's nothing. There's no reason to be at that bus stop unless you just came out of Best Friends. There's nothing else there.
Yeah. Where's that? Kanab, Utah.
Yeah, and they renamed the street. They just made up a name and renamed the street, the road that's out there in front of them. It's like a highway almost. Paddock, here's my big thing with Paddock. I was there, and I know a lot of stuff that hasn't been reported nationwide, and so much stuff you see on the internet is just so wrong and just geographically wrong and just crazy. They get stuff just wrong. My friend ran the whole Family Resource Center, coordinating the lawsuits and the insurance companies and FEMA and the Red Cross and all the attorneys and law enforcement and everything. Was down there for some of the press conferences that people thought was so suspicious. There's nothing unusual. No one in the local press there or the local, and plus years later, people I went to church with, friends of mine, sharing stories. There's nothing sinister, crazy, sinister, big cover-up with Arabs and helicopters and, Mandalay Bay, the Four Seasons on top of the Mandalay Bay and all this crazy stuff you hear. So that's my thing with that. But there was a lot of panic from the cops. If anything, I think there was a lot of friendly fire. It might have killed some of these people. They left bodies underneath the stage, and they didn't go in there and get them out till 5 o'clock the next morning. Okay, so people died because of the incompetence. They wouldn't let the ambulances go in. The cops wouldn't go in, and the stagehands had these yellow wheelbarrows. Big yellow plastic wheelbarrows that they were going in, taking bodies and wheeling them out and bringing them over to the ambulances. So there's a lot of stuff people have no idea what went on that week. They closed. There was another threat Thursday that week, and I had to keep my kid from school home the next day. But we had to keep him home from school again. This was I was there, man. I lived this stuff.
Yeah.
And we had to keep them home from school on Thursday because there was another threat to the schools on that Thursday that's never been reported. All these internet experts looking at pictures. One time this guy tells me, they said, well, you should interview the cabbie because there was a YouTube video with some. I'm going to interview a guy who, just because he's on YouTube, I'm going to interview. I know 20 people down there. It's crazy stuff.
Right. Yeah, no, I really like your fundamental take on that, because I've always, it almost, like, one of my long-standing takes on that issue is that, people who have been like, he had everything, he had so much money, how could he, why would he go insane? It's so mysterious, and I feel like it's just, like, a fundamental, like, epistemic rot that people don't understand. Like, if you, like, are in, like, the dark, living by night, like, playing this, like, demonic game, like, you're gonna lose your mind, but, yeah.
I mean, that even something too. The casinos can't have that out there. The local power, Adelson, all these guys, they can't have it out there. The playing Joker poker makes you go crazy and shoot up a town. that's bad for business.
Joker poker. I mean, wow. I just realized that like Joker, like that's a constant recurring theme in mass shooters and going back to Aurora in 2012. That whole "I'm the Joker." It's probably a few 8chan shooters that have said things along those lines. It also makes me think about just the spate of mass shootings that we've had. I hadn't thought about this in relation to Las Vegas. I really wasn't aware of his like Joker poker addiction, but the latest one of the latest guys was obsessed with My Little Pony. Like they looked. Somebody found his YouTube account
in the afterlife. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was kind of brainwashed.
It was a FedEx shooter recently. He killed like 11 people. It's funny because Applejack is like the sort of apparently he also had like made some posts on white supremacist forums, and Applejack is kind of like the cowboy of the ponies. She like works on an apple farm and is like a down home pony. So I guess he wanted to be,
Dude, you know way too much about that, dude.
I had no idea. Yeah. Well, also, I had tweeted about this, but that also reminded me of another situation, because I've seen this happen a few times now with mass shooters. The other one was like Nicholas Cruz, the Stoneman Douglas shooter, back in like 2018. I remember finding his YouTube channel back before it probably got taken down, when people were sleuthing around in the aftermath of that, and that kid was super weird. I mean, he was running around, he was posting in YouTube comments like, I want to be the next mass shooter. He was telling people at school that he was going to come back and be a mass shooter one day. It was like there were like 30 calls to his like weird adoptive parents, and the dad who like kind of took him in, I think had a background in Army intelligence. It was a little bizarre. But the thing I remember is that he had a few different playlists of videos on his account, and they were so creepy because like one of his main playlists, or maybe it was like a list of things he liked, were basically a mixture of nothing but like a GoPro like combat cam footage from the Syrian civil war, and also from like Blackwater operators in Iraq that had been uploaded to YouTube, and a bunch of ElsaGate videos. Are you familiar with ElsaGate, Ed?
Yeah, we did a couple of shows on that with what's her name, Dr. The one who did all the stuff on Kraut on Kinsey.
Oh yeah, I've heard her before.
Dr. Reisman.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so I mean that's bizarre, right? Because I mean I discovered ElsaGate kind of when everybody did, like a few years ago, and just thought it was so creepy. I mean, just the bizarre like algorithmic like cartoons that tend to just like YouTube is so designed. They can, and they can target people too, just like they target us for our shopping. They can easily target people and give them. Like, they can give what's his name, Jim Jordan, one set of YouTube views, and one set of news comes on his computer, and a totally different set comes online. He could be seeing stuff about illegal aliens killing people 24 hours a day and think that's real. Exactly. I mean, when you think about the manipulation that just like Facebook is able to do just normally, and then if you were, it's so easily deniable probably to go in and target somebody with an algorithm, or even think about like Cambridge Analytica or some companies like that were kind of setting up a framework where you could do this to all kinds of people. And then what happens if you get an unstable person? Could you kind of like basically groom them just over the screen?
Well, and Cambridge Analytica, by the way, supports people like Project Veritas and all stuff like that. They're handing out money all over the place, and it's the Mercer
dynasty, right?
Yeah, they're openly bragging how they have prostitutes that they send to people's house to blackmail them. No one says. And by the way, too, all the whistleblowers on that stuff, I can't get one of them to come on my show. None of them will even answer an email from me. So that's sus, you know.
That's wild. Yeah, it is sus. It is sus. Yeah, I think Dave Troy said on Recluse that. Yeah, sir.
Yeah. Before I forget, back to Judith Reisman, Dr. Judith Reisman, who has all this fascinating stuff on Dr. Kinsey, who was the creepiest pervert you ever met in your life. Who actually mutilated his penis in a bathtub. You know, and it was all kind of studies. Oh my God, are you kidding me? But anyway, he was friends with
Kenneth Anger. And Kenneth
That's
Anger.
What I was going to say, right? He was friends with Crowley. We knew he was friends with Crowley, but we just found out. Kenneth Anger posted it. That Kenneth Anger and Kinsey went to one of Crowley's palaces and refilled the artwork in there and stuff like that. We have all the pictures.
Yeah, they made
the frescoes.
Made a film of the Abbey of Thelema.
There you go.
In Italy. Yeah.
There was a BBC film that was lost mysteriously, so we never got to see them going through it together.
Were you able to confirm that he had corresponded with Crowley? Because he was definitely fascinated with Crowley, but it was, last I checked, it was hard to confirm if he actually had, confirmed correspondences with him or letters between them or anything like that.
You'd have to listen to the 2-hour show I did with Reisman.
Yeah,
because I know.
I will listen to
when we started talking about Crowley and Kinsey, I said, well, have you ever said this? Have you ever talked about this before? She says, no one ever asked me before. She says, no one's ever asked me these questions before. You know, she invited me to come down and go through all the material.
Wow. Oh, cool. That's cool. Well, I think our 5th episode was all about Kenneth Anger, and we got we had a nice little detour into Albert Kinsey and how all of his groundbreaking sex research was actually, it turns out, just one pedophile's recounting of his sexual exploits, and then he just wrote it up as it was this big secret study that
a lot of the statistics about the masturbation habits of people in general were based on the diary of some pedo that he had access
struck
to
up a friendship with, I guess.
And
then Kenneth Anger used to shoot actually Kinsey used to film Kenneth Anger masturbating in his attic.
Yeah, there was a lot of guys up in that attic. Kenneth Anger too. I was sent a video once of Tom Petty's daughter, naked, covered in blood, and with blood being poured on her, dancing around in a pentagram. That was directed by that was directed by Kenneth Anger.
Wow, that makes perfect sense. Wow, that's amazing.
Okay.
Wow,
that freaks us out.
There are always rumors about Kenneth Anger having snuff films and secret movies recorded and things like that. So I mean, it makes sense.
He was Adult Swim.
Really?
The Cartoon Network, Adult Swim.
No way. No way.
But Charlie Pickles, the dog, the satanic dog there, he was all involved with that thing. Now, there's a rumor out there, I'm not sure if it's been confirmed, and the stuff you hear repeated over and over again, and sometimes it's false, but that he gave some bullets to Mark David Chapman.
Yeah, no, we just talked about this in our episode about the Eagles. There's actually 2 connections here, which is starting to creep me out a little bit, that connect back to Kenneth Anger. So one, yes, Mark David Chapman approached Kenneth Anger. I think it was maybe at a film premiere in Hawaii, of all places. Maybe I think it was a year or 2 before he shot John Lennon. It might have actually been exactly a year before he shot John. Actually, no, I'm sorry. But yeah, so he approached him and offered him these bullets, and then he went and shot John Lennon. Now, we just did an episode about the Eagles, the band. And okay, there's 2 weird things. So we read, one of our main sources from that was his book Heaven and Hell by Don Felder. Was the guitarist who joined the Eagles, and then he's the only one that's been excommunicated from them, so he's the only one that will can spill any dirt or whatever. But so he mentioned that I think it was in the early 80s, he lived in a mansion in Malibu, and one day this super creepy guy just shows up in his yard and is talking about I don't know what, but he walks up to Don Felder and he gives him some bullets and says, "These will keep you safe." And then they kind of freak out. He freaks out, brings his family inside, grabs a knife, calls the cops. This guy walks back to his car, opens up the trunk, takes out a dress. He puts on the dress, and then he takes more bullets out of his trunk and then starts throwing them around the yard, and blessing them. And then he gets in his car and drives off. And I guess the police eventually caught this guy, but he escaped from the Camarillo State Mental Hospital up north of LA, which a lot of people rumored is what the song Hotel California is actually about. It's about this mental asylum, which I looked into and was notorious for like abusive medical treatments and was involved, at least to some extent, in MK Ultra experiments on, psychiatric patients. So that jumps out as like very weird that a crazy person breaks out of kind of the proverbial Hotel California to give Don Felder some bullets, just like Mark David Chapman did to Kenneth Anger. Now, what's even weirder about that, Ed, is that Don Felder grew up very poor and kind of obscure in Gainesville, Florida, and he supported himself when he was a teenager by teaching guitar lessons to local kids. And one of his star students that he recounts in the book was this little angel blonde-haired kid who was pretty charismatic named Tommy Petty. He taught Tom Petty guitar when he was like 12, and then years later it was like, oh, look, it's Tom Petty. And I mean, I just kind of thought, hey, what a crazy coincidence. These guys all run into each other. But that's weird that then Tom Petty's little sister would be dancing around covered in blood naked in a Kenneth Anger movie. His daughter. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Tom Petty's daughter. That is very bizarre. So I don't know what to make of all that. I mean, the Eagles, like, we got into the whole thing. I think that, they always said that Anton LaVey was, like, in the album art that you can see. Mm-hmm. I don't personally think that's true. But, they were managed by David Geffen. Like, they were David Geffen's big come up in the entertainment industry. And actually, they went on a trip. Where else during one of their tours they recounted this, like, in their documentary, to Paradise Island Resorts International, and they almost got busted with drugs because they had a ton, and their manager Irving Azoff took aside some of the customs officials and had a word with them, and then they were just like let through and not searched and stuff. So it made me even wonder, why was Irving Azoff, of all the places to go on a little trip in the middle of your tour, kind of interesting that he would go to Resorts International, which had all these connections with Meyer Lansky, who had all these connections back to Hollywood, and I think even things like MCA and the biggest corporation. Like it gets into such a web after a while.
Yeah, the Meyer Lansky company loaned money to Michael Jackson.
Really?
Yeah, when he was financing his book, there's royalties. One of the companies that financed it was a Meyer Lansky company.
Oh, yeah,
on
Meyer
the subject
Lansky.
Of music.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You can.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. We were just wondering what your current thoughts were on the. We know that you were a big proponent of the Paul is dead situation. I just wanted to hear what your take on that is at this point. Who is like the guy who we see walking around saying that he's Paul McCartney? In your view, we talked about some of the possible suspects. What's your picture on how all that happened? And who is this alleged Paul McCartney today?
Well, that's a good question. The thing is, if you look at just the Heather Mills connection to Paul McCartney, and her relationship with Adnan Khashoggi, and how.
Oh, Ed, don't you mean Adnan Khashoggi?
That's so true, man.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, man. That's sus. Yeah. How they mispronounce his name. That's sus.
They all do. Right? And a party line down and then Khashoggi dies, and while Trump's in office, and there's no mention of it at all. It wasn't even in the news.
Zero mention.
So
nutty.
I'm not married to the theory that he's dead. I think it's clear he's been replaced. There's a different one there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've all been
So
replaced.
The real one might still be out there somewhere. Yeah.
And the real one's brother has occasional problems with the law, probably to keep him in line and keep him quiet.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
What do you have any line on? I know you've mentioned this before, but a lot of people have talked about the Beatles and the Tavistock Institute. Now, do you have any line on maybe how? Because I don't know, the British invasion, the more I look back in retrospect, just seems suspicious. Like, it's like, oh, really? Just this wave of, cute British bands just totally swept up, right after JFK's assassination, and just distracted all these boomers, basically, to be obsessed with, like rock and roll and all these. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think these guys were more of a construction than kind of like some of the Laurel Canyon bands that McGowan covered?
Well, it's interesting because they did that. About Dylan's son did that documentary about Laurel Canyon. Did you see it?
Yeah.
You
I did. It was a pretty not satisfying, I would say.
No, but there's a lot of clues in there. You know, they definitely they were hinted around a lot. They didn't come right out and say stuff, but they definitely gave a lot of tip of the hats. You know, a lot more than I was expecting. You know, and you see that scene when they talk about Abbey Studios. You know. Or no, with the other ones, the studios, you know, that the Beatles were in, and they're wearing lab coats.
Abbey Road Studios. Yeah,
they were wearing white lab coats like doctors, you know.
Wow.
And then you see
that was actually, you know what? I remember you saying that, and actually in Don Felder's autobiography, when his first band Flow, and they went up to New York to record an album, he mentioned how the recording environment, it was some German guy that ran this recording studio in like New Jersey, and he mentioned how kind of the uncomfortable vibe recording in there because this guy wore a white laboratory coat as he sat behind the controls and was like treating it like I'm a scientist, you know, and he was like, this is a little weird, like why is he dressed up like that? And so that just made me think of the Tavistock thing as well.
And also, it turns out that all those places, EMI, and they were all defense contractors.
Oh yeah. Not only that, the thing. One of the things that we dug into looking into the Eagles was, were you aware that like Warner Brothers, as we kind of know it, was actually kind of bought out by what seems to be a Meyer Lansky associated like mafia front company in the late '60s? I think it was the National Kinney Parking Company. It's really I have to do more research, but it's the National Kinney Corporation. This shows you how just like bizarre things are in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry, that basically they bought they were in the 60s, and they were run by a couple of individuals who were very connected, and it was run by a guy named Steve Ross. Okay, so Steve Ross eventually became the CEO of Time Warner, and they merged with Time in like 1989. So you got the whole like Henry Luce kind of Skull and Bones connection. But Kinney Parking Company bought the company that owned DC Comics like in the 70s. They got into they bought Warner Brothers 7 Arts in 1967, which was struggling, and that company owned Atlantic Records, which was founded by Ahmet Erdogan, who was the son of like a Turkish ambassador to the United States and grew up on Embassy Row, and like grew up around all these like political kind of high flying society.
I've actually heard that name before.
Yeah, well, you know, Frank Zappa named one of his sons after him, Ahmet Zappa. Yeah. So, you know, these guys had this company, the Kinney Parking Company, that was actually, it was run by Manny Kimmel, Sigmund Dornbusch, and mob figure Abner Zwillman, who was connected to Luciano and Lansky. And so they buy Warner Brothers 7 Arts, and then they kind of reform into Warner Communications. In 1972, they had a national financial scandal involving their parking lots, which I don't know, or maybe being used for money laundering or something. So they spun off all their parking lot business and became Warner Communications, which is today Warner Media. So actually, like, Warner Brothers today is like been hollowed out, and like it's like a mafia wearing the face of Warner Brothers. You know what I mean? And that company is the one that like David Geffen was super connected to and ended up merging. And actually, okay, you're going to like this because you've had Daniel Hopsicker on a lot, right?
Yeah.
And he's great. Like, and I really have appreciated his coverage of like the Barry Seal movie. Remember that?
Yeah.
You know, with Tom Cruise and all that stuff. And he's the Barry Seal expert. And I remember he didn't like that movie very much, and part of it was because of who the director was, Doug Liman, right? And Doug Liman's father was Arthur Liman, who was like the Mueller of the Iran-Contra inquiry in Congress, right? He squared off against Ollie North, and then basically kind of lost. Like, none of these people really ended up going to jail, right? You could argue that maybe certain things might have been covered up, but wouldn't you know, when I was looking through all this corporate lineage stuff, so Steve Ross ended up running Warner for a few decades. You know who his main consigliere was? His top lawyer, his top confidant? It was Arthur Lyman.
Really?
It was Arthur Lyman. So Arthur Lyman was apparently instrumental in getting the old Yaley Blue Bloods at Time magazine to convince them to merge with Time Warner and become the behemoth that we know today. So this guy was like working for Steve Ross, who basically was running this company that started out as a mob front that turned into a media conglomerate, and then simultaneously he's turning around, getting to the bottom of Iran-Contra. And then his son makes the movie about Barry Seal, you know, like.
Yeah, but they always seem to make a movie with the official story, like the movie they made about Jeff MacDonald, you know, and that's
did
what
they make
everybody.
a movie?
Oh yeah, 2-part movie. It was made for TV movie, and that the movie they made about McMartin Preschool, you know, that was James Woods and Oliver Stone.
With James Woods, yeah. I remember you saying something really weird about the financing behind that movie. Yeah, didn't Oliver Stone get into it?
Executive producers are the Eberrols, the people who ran the false memory thing and all that stuff. It's the people who put together the press conference. It was their house where they had the press conference with the McMartin family and 60 Minutes, where it starts out, do these people look like pedophiles? Ha, ha, ha. And great investigative work there, you know. And by the way, too, I know for a fact that Alex Constantine contacted Oliver Stone Productions and told him, hey, man, you know, and Stone went ahead and did it. And then I confronted Stone's son, Sean Stone, and I says, hey, man, what's the story? I said, I know your father was contacted. And his thing to me was, well, you know, I've interviewed Douglas Dietrich. He went on 5 times, Douglas Dietrich. And now everyone knows Doug Dietrich is completely full of shit. You know, it has nothing to do with any of this, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did he mention that he also interviewed Aquino? Because he did.
This was
Sean
before.
Stone.
This was before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What a softball interview, by the way. I remember listening to that years ago and being I listened to his show back in the, 2013, 2014, and I remember he had some shady characters on. I mean, what do you think? What do you think the deal is with Sean Stone? Because now he's a QAnon person.
I don't know. From that first time I talked to him on Justin, you know.
Yeah. What's what do you think the angle is with even Oliver Stone? Because he was for a while kind of the most I mean, he made JFK. You know, isn't that a big deal? But actually, the last time I watched it, a few months ago, did you notice who executive produced JFK? It was Arnon Milchan. And Arnon Milchan is one huge Hollywood producer, but I think by his own admission was an Israeli intelligence officer for several decades.
I missed that last part. I was reading a message. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. The movie JFK was executive produced by Arnon Milchan, who's a very big Hollywood producer, but also, I think by his own admission, was a Israeli intelligence officer for several decades.
That's fascinating. It doesn't surprise me.
It's right there on his Wikipedia.
You can do a great movie about JFK, but you only need to change a couple of little things that throw people off the accurate trails. You know.
Exactly. I mean, it's a good.
Yeah.
It's a good start. I feel like looking back on it today, but it kind of just scratches the surface of the real networks of things that were going on. I think, and
it doesn't mention the Watergate burglars at all.
It doesn't. It doesn't have E. Howard Hunt. I think that's a good example of even something that could be good can also conceal certain things. Like it kind of is a limited hangout to some degree, possibly. And I mean, it's weird. I mean, also even weirder than that is like in the mid '80s, he made. I remember I watched it once years ago. I thought it was pretty good, but he made a pretty progressive film called Salvador, starring James L. Woods.
Yeah.
And how does James L. Woods become this like super right-wing guy when he's doing this movie that's kind of like pro-Sandinista a little bit? It's weird.
Well, I did a whole show about Woods. In fact, he blocked me right after I did it, so he definitely listened to it. Talking about Woods and his connections with McMartin movie and his own stuff with little kids, little girls and stuff like that, inviting some 16-year-old to go to Las Vegas with him and stuff. You know?
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes. That's it feels like a Bannon, like, pot calling the kettle black kind of situation with him. Yeah. I had something I wanted to say, but I forgot. Call it. Do you have anything while I think?
Well, I don't know how close we are to wrapping up. I mean, what's your general read on, like, the deep politics landscape, like, post-Trump? You know, what would your take on, like, an overview of this
That's a good question.
Like, how do you see? Yeah.
Well, it's like his business as usual, you know? Like, here you got Biden appoints John Kerry, you know? You'd think he'd be embarrassed after all the shenanigans John Kerry's son was up to with his own son. But back to business as usual, you know? And we're going to be invading all the right places, and gas prices are going to go up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. Yeah, I definitely don't think that Biden has a sense of, like, shame about, like, filling these positions with the standard individuals. I don't think that seems to occur to him as something to be embarrassed about at all. It definitely doesn't seem to be something that is even conceivable reaction to him. I almost think that there is a certain continuity. You know, I think that this is all, you know, people tend to conceive, like, part of the reason why I like to think about things in continuity is whenever people think about things as being a radical break, I like to look for the continuities. And when people think about things in terms of being continuous, I like to look for the differences. It's just like my instinct. So more and more, since some of the hysteria around Trump as, like, this sort of, you know, that was the standard narrative, is like this incredible break from norms and things like that. And especially now that that's sort of beginning to die down and we've come, you know, Trump is now no longer president, I think we can even have a clearer view of some of the continuities that are present. I think that is an important place to look, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. Just to piggyback off of that, I was just looking into something yesterday when I was looking more into Charles Flynn, which I think illustrates your point, Khalid. So, like, you know, not only has Charles Flynn sort of not been relieved of his command by Joe Biden, as you might expect.
Yeah, right.
He's still deep in the game, and I found a very unsettling website called C4ISR.net, which is that I think that's the Center for Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance.net. So basically about like drone warfare and remote warfare. And I found out that there's a whole new thing going on in the U.S. military that has the absolutely, like, brain melting algorithm CGADC2, which is the joint combined, or the joint combined, or the combined joint all domain command and control kind of system that is now basically all the military branches are trying to build an integrated kind of a technological kind of data sharing system to, I guess, inaugurate, like, the next generation of warfare. And in all the articles, it quotes, who else? Lieutenant General Charles Flynn, who I guess is leading this effort. He says the core challenges of the future fight are speed and scale. Charles Flynn, Army Deputy Chief of Staff, G357, said in the news release, the future fight will be much faster, and the joint force will have more sensors and more shooters. It will be more widely distributed than ever before. So, you know, this is, I guess, the and you know what? The Space Force is integral to all of this, to building this, like, unified data sharing system among all military branches that basically is going to be designed to make us be able to launch, like, you know, unmanned aerial attacks and things like that, and share information and intelligence in real time in a more distributed network kind of way, which I guess these people are all saying is going to, you know, revolutionize the kill chain and allow us to stay ahead of Russia and China and all these things. And I guess this puts an end to the bickering between the different branches that were all building their own data management systems. And so it's like, you know, it's like the same old, you know, they came up with this, I think, in like 2018 or 2019. So it's like, you know, these things are like on autopilot, and somebody like Mike Flynn's brother is along for the ride, and they kind of don't care at the end of the day. They're all on the same team, you know, the U.S. empire at the end of the day. And I think there are some intramural squabbles that get heated sometimes, but it's hard to see, that, you know, there's there's such a radical break that
they are all capitalists. We can't forget.
Yeah, exactly. They're all capitalists at the end of the day, and that's what people always. Whether it's the right wing saying that Soros is giving all this money to BLM and Antifa, and everybody in corporations is actually a Maoist, and they want to install communism, or it's just that it's absolutely ridiculous, and it obscures the idea, or the idea that Biden is this progressive, awesome guy that's going to resolve the contradictions of capitalism with the help of Davos, and we're going to have a great reset, and we're going to have inclusive shareholder capitalism. It's still capitalism at the end of the day, and as I've said before,
but they are doing something where they're giving out a lot of money. There's a lot of money out there.
Absolutely,
SBA,
and I think if anything, the PPP thing, absolutely, and I wonder with and crypto, the way that crypto, like Dogecoin being 40 cents now, is kind of mind-blowing and makes you wonder about the stability of the US dollar at this point. Bannon was into cryptocurrency right from the beginning.
There has to be some kind of reset, because capitalism is unsustainable unless the next step would be slavery, outright slavery. Otherwise, and I don't think people are going to go for slavery. They're going to object to it.
Well, I think unless they get tricked into it, which is something the great deceiver himself would love to do.
Yeah, I feel like there's two takes on the reset where, on one hand, some people are just like, what? Reset everything? That sounds horrible. I mean, I think that, a reset actually, in theory, sounds good, but the people who discuss the reset and who are taking control of the idea of the reset are not actually going to do a reset of the kind that anyone would desire. In theory, a reset where everything is better. Of course, that's but the people who are managing the reset are the people who are the most deeply invested in the way things are. So they're either not going to reset anything, or everything that they reset will only make things worse. I think there needs to be maybe a war of the resets. The vision of a better reset needs to be asserted.
No, definitely. If the same criminals are in charge, it's going to never be to our benefit whatsoever. But the idea of a reset or a 7-year jubilee is a biblical concept. I think it could be sold that way. Or should be if people are talking about this thing. But I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem like people are even trying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any organized, real alternative to this kind of global hegemonic techno-capitalist system, and I feel like all these technologies are being built to further enslave us. I mean, and you see every time they roll out something nefarious, it gets spun into something goofy that we don't take seriously. Like, for example, 5G, saying 5G causes COVID-19, but in reality, 5G allows that damn robot dog from Boston Dynamics to run around and chase you with a drone operator at the local police station driving it, or something like that. It's going to allow kind of things like more control, surveillance, things like that, or saying there's a microchip in the mRNA vaccine, instead of saying, well, they're going to use this as a pretext to roll out biometric passports so that you are going to be restricted for things, and then they're going to use that for other things down the road. So
I don't know if you've seen the show I did about the Nicole Junkerman. I didn't do the show. Johnny Vedmore came on the show about the Nicole the Israeli Bond girl that nobody's talking about. She became noticed because she was on Epstein's plane privately with him. Usually he had large groups, but this was a small party, just the two of them. And he invested in her company, which was an app on your phone that, if you had a medical emergency, would send the information from your phone to the paramedics and stuff like that, but also send out information to everyone in your immediate vicinity. So if you were contagious or something like that, they would be made aware.
Oh.
Yeah, how do you like that?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is taking hold in other countries. Now, when we did that first show about her, right? No one's talked about this woman. Okay? Even you guys don't know her name. Right? And you guys seem to be paying attention to what's going on. Okay? You guys have heard it. Now, what do you call it? Yeah. We put this woman in it. She went around the world filing lawsuits, not just YouTube strikes and complaints on an online to YouTube. She went to court, okay? and filed defamation lawsuits in different countries, Brussels, all over the place. I got like 10 of them. I get a notice every now and then from YouTube. Oh, your video has been taken down in Berlin or someplace or Portugal.
Oh, weird.
Because she's running around really taking this stuff down.
That is bizarre.
Makes you wonder too about the friendship between Gates and Epstein too, which is no one talks about.
Oh, yeah, which, is getting more and more clear. And, Gates himself was the whole narrative around him, we'll probably do a whole deep dive on him one day. But, he seems to be fulfilling the role that during the Cold War was filled by the Ford Foundation. And we all know about Henry Ford, big Nazi, admirer of Hitler, writer of the International Jew, hated, labor unions and, anything like that. Didn't even like philanthropy, but he had to do it to launder his, to not get hit with an estate tax when he died. His kids had to do it. But now it's like Gates has moved into that. And, his whole story, he comes from kind of old banking family money in Seattle. His mom was on the board of IBM. And introduced, basically told the chairman of IBM about my son as a company. And then they got the first contract to build the software for the IBM personal computer, just stuff like that. It's like, wait, okay, so this kid, I think he might be even more of a front man for a whole class of people. And that's also what he's doing now with all of his health and education stuff, just what he does around Africa. He slips up every now and then and says that, all the birth control stuff is for population control. And, where he said, we don't want people in Yemen, we don't want them to procreate too much because that would be a bad thing. He slips up from time to time and says weird things like that. And I just think that's, he's the vanguard of whatever this kind of ruling elite would like to roll out and create new forms of capture and control and monopoly, basically. Because at the end of the day, these people are like monopoly addicts. They gotta be in control of the whole they want to cartelize everything, and so yeah, we gotta be real vigilant about these types of characters. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah, so I guess we can wrap up there. Is there any where can people find your stuff, Ed?
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, my Patreon. You go to my Patreon. I put up 8 hours of new content each month, plus a lot of free stuff too. I'm always putting up court documents and stuff like that. I'll put that up for free. So there, keep an eye on things. Check in there every now and then. There's always good content going up. Then I put up all my shows ad-free up on Patreon too. The Opperman Report Patreon. If you live in Nevada or California, Utah, I'm getting a lot of coverage in Florida, man. You can find me on AM/FM radio in Florida. I'm on at 8. I'm on at 10. All the way from Miami all the way up to West Palm Beach, I-95, 175 miles I-95. So, just like, I was talking on a repeat the other night about how we can get our guys in Nevada, we can promote them on the show. If you could just help support the show, we can do a show about 2016, And you look back now, all the people running Nevada politics are all my friends. All the guys I had on the show. Okay, the first radio appearance they did anywhere was my show. And we got them now running Nevada politics.
Was that a lot of the Bernie people for 2016?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not taking all credit because a lot of it was that we were so pissed off we got ripped off. It really radicalized us. But, our people are running Nina Turner's campaign. They're running the DNC in Nevada now. Such radical people are in there right now running things that the previous DNC hacks deleted all the information on the computers when our guys came in to take over. Okay?
Wow.
That's how, So we made strides. And that's what I'm going to do down here in Florida next, okay? So if you want to support me through Patreon, next step is Florida. We're going to grow. It's a swing state. We can really start influencing things if we can flip Florida to the Opperman regime.
Yeah, okay.
And you can find me, you can find me on Spreaker too, and on the Opera Report Spreaker channel. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when we put up content. I play repeats there every night.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got a deep archive, the deepest I think of anybody probably.
Yeah, before me, the people talking about UFOs and Nibiru and stuff like that. And I'm the first true crime conspiracy guy to come out here, and plus throw in some entertaining stuff too as well.
Totally.
Do you have a take
we'd love to have
on
you.
Bigfoot before we go? What do you think about Bigfoot? You know, anything?
I don't know, man.
Yeah, ever thought?
They got all those hieroglyphics and stuff like that all over Nevada with pictures of things that look like Bigfoot. I don't know. You know?
Yeah.
And you know what else is really weird too? If you
there
go
you
to the Getty Museum in California, right, the big one.
Oh God.
Okay.
They got all this stuff in there about unicorns, you know, and they have old almanacs where they have unicorns in there listed along with all the real animals. So what's going on with that too?
Yeah, well,
Wow.
people believed in unicorns for a very long time, you know. And I mean, unicorns are also a very important occult symbol, you know. I mean, if you go to the Met in New York, you can see the unicorn tapestries where the unicorn really represents Christ in those. Yeah, it's a very interesting piece of medieval art. But yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Are you sure that's not My Little Pony?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, is My Little Pony a unicorn?
I think
some of them are. Yeah, now that you think.
Oh
well,
my God.
Well, yeah, My Little Pony. You know, there's many ponies. Some are just ponies. Some are unicorns. Some are alicorns, and some are pegasi. So there's a whole occult hierarchy of ponies.
Well, Ed, I think I forget what we mentioned, but that J. Paul Getty Jr. was like the financial benefactor of Kenneth Anger from like the 70s onward.
Really, I didn't know that.
But only after the Ford Foundation gave Kenneth Anger a grant in 1964. So, and also, the Gettys were basically literally behind the political careers of both Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
like
Harris
they're Getty kids, Gavin Newsom's dad. Yeah, Gavin Newsom's dad was the lawyer, the consigliere to, it was either Gordon Getty or J. Paul Getty Jr. He actually, I think, delivered the bag of the ransom money when those guys kidnapped.
That's right.
Yeah. And last thing I'll leave you with, because I think we mentioned this at maybe our second episode, but Mae Brussel found out, I think in the 70s or the 80s, that there was a sketchy technology satellite defense contractor company in Silicon Valley. I want to say it was maybe called TCI, and the three big principals in it were, I believe, J. Paul Getty Jr., Gavin Newsom's dad, Bill Newsom, and a guy named Otto von Bolschwing, who in 1980 it was discovered was an SS war criminal whose personal secretary was Ronald Reagan's secretary. Oh, and also Ronald Reagan made her the ambassador to Austria in the 80s until she was replaced by Ronald Lauder. And then that is the period where Jeffrey Epstein mysteriously got an Austrian passport out of nowhere.
Really?
Yeah. So look up Otto von Bolschwing. He was a Nazi. He was like a high-class Nazi who came to California, was in business with Gavin Newsom's dad and the Gettys for like a Pentagon defense contractor that I think they sold like satellite footage to Israel for like the 6-Day War. And yeah, basically whole web of people there. The Gettys are so powerful. I think they're also kind of behind Pelosi, but they're Republicans. So it's a little weird. All these San Francisco liberals, are basically backed by this wealthy robber baron oil family of Republican, maybe occultists. Fun times we're living in.
And the unicorn is also a symbol in Masonry to an extent. Like you said, it's biblical symbol, or at least it was, because of like a mistranslation in the King James Bible and everything. But yeah, it's an old symbol for Christ, an old heraldic symbol. So it is very interesting that they have all these unicorn materials collected there. I wonder if there's a reason for that.
Last question, Ed. What do you think about Freemasonry?
Well, but before we get to that, when you mentioned Mae Brussels, I remember Mae Brussels way back, screaming about electronic mail. They're going to be able to read all your mail. They're going to see what's in your mail.
Oh my, she was right.
She was right on so much. We used to, we didn't get Mae Brussels on the East Coast, okay?
Yeah.
So what would happen is they would mail us audio tapes, cassette tapes to WBAI in Manhattan. And you could check them out and take it home with you. But then you'd have to bring it back the next day. Your name would be on the list. You'd have to sign the thing and then bring it back the next day after you listened to it. So when you got it, you had to listen to it that night because you had to bring it back the next day. Otherwise,
that's exciting. That's exciting. Yeah. Well, all our archives are up there now. I think I forgot the website, but I was able to find. She had some great episodes about Michael Aquino in the '80s, and even up to covering like the scandal around the Presidio. And then that's right when she died. Was like basically, I think he was almost like her main target in the last maybe year and a half, 2 years of her show, and then she gets cancer and poof, gone. And but she did some really good original digging. We got some good info about Aquino from her. So she's a legend, Oh
yeah, great stuff, man. Yeah. May Brussels.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, this has been fun, Ed. Great to have you on. We'd love to have you back on any other variety of topics. I'm sure some things will come up.
No, great. I enjoyed our interview too, as well, which people can hear. I'm probably gonna play it this weekend. So keep in touch.
You can find it on Apple, Spreaker. All right, and
good to meet you. Good to have you on.
Nice to meet you, Khalid.
Yeah. All right.
Khalid, yes.
So,
Khalid. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Like the DJ.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I gotta get some food.
All right.
I'm starving.
All right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So until next time, dear listeners, stay vigilant.
Okay.
Peace.
All right, Ed. See you later.
Okay. Thank you.
Life is a game of business, and in the end we fight. To new, young, and old, our thought and soul, and everybody thinks they're right. War is a game of business, a game we shouldn't play, because men with guns killed all our sons and blew us all away, and they called it paranoia. It's almost over, 'cause nobody hears what the people say. Paranoia is almost over. Ha, 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 ha. Realistically, the bombs are ready. Technically, nuclear by name. Capability, a total destructive, radioactive, death in flame. There was talk of a fiery doom, prophesied since the dawn of time in the world of bloodshed, mass confusion, killer diseases, pollution and crime. Man is in conflict with nature, and that is why there's so much sin. The mother nature's delicate balance will fix it so nobody wins in catastrophic, Reaganomic, and nobody hears what the people say. It's atomic, catastrophic. Ha, 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 ha. 1,000 miles away from home, a mortally wounded soldier dies, and on the bloodstained battlefield, his life flashes before his eyes. Before he died, the man saw Jesus, and Jesus Christ took his hand, and all the soldiers' dying breath, the good Lord took him to the promised land, 'cause there's no